It's time now for our meditation. So, settle in your seat, feet on the floor. Close your eyes if you're comfortable. And let these words of Linda Marcella Whitsitt guide your meditation. Begin to relax and concentrate. Gently stretch your upper shoulders and neck and let your chin drop down to your chest. Roll to your left ear. Roll back to center. To the right ear. Back to center. And relax. Take a breath in through the nose. Out through the mouth. Take in a breath and lift your shoulders towards your ears. And hold that breath, hold that posture for just a second. Let it go. Release, become still. Direct your attention to the back of the head, at the base of the skull, where the medulla oblongata connects brain to spinal cord. This is the center of spiritual zeal. Now visualize a vibrant orange glow permeating the back of your neck and radiating through the brain, sending the message, relax, to the brain. Sense the slowing of breath and pulse as you still your body and quiet your mind. Hear this truth as your own. I am the magnificent power of zeal. I am enthusiastic, audacious, and devoted. I eagerly awaken each morning on purpose, exuberant about the choices ahead of me. I boldly think, envision, and act in the direction of my intentions. I devote my thought, my energy, and my time toward being a blessing by using my gifts and talents for good. I am the ever-flowing, always forward-moving vibration of possibility. I remain attentive to the present moment, knowing that my focus on the present is my ticket to my desired future. I am centered in the evolutionary, divine power of zeal, an inexhaustible supply of passion and readiness. I do not dissipate this power by empty or frenetic activity. Instead, I remain wholehearted and single-minded in my spiritual practice of enthusiasm, audacity, and devotion. I am inspired and focused, exhilarated in my sense of purpose. I am the magnificent power of zeal. So it is. So we claim it. Amen. Few people still returning. Okay. Well, I wanted to give you a little bit of background. I particularly wanted to do this talk on zeal for a little different perspective. I so often see it understood as jocularity and frivolity in light-hearted ways, and that's fine. That's part of zeal. But there's more to it, and it's about the passion that is under it, that is its true energy. So zeal is more than the exuberance and enthusiasm we so often associate with it. We've all heard this definition. I mean, what is this, the fourth or fifth time this month that we have heard this definition from Charles Fillmore, our co-founder? He described zeal as the dynamic power of the great universal impulse that lies behind all action. It's the impulse to go forward and the urge behind all things. So energy is zeal in motion, and energy is the forerunner of every effect. So there we have Charles Fillmore. And as we all know, Charles Fillmore was the one in our movement who put these powers together and started teaching them and using them to build consciousness. Well, Charles died in 1948. And so we've got about a 10 to 12-year stretch when the 12 powers just kind of got put aside. And then along came this new unity minister, Ed Rabel, who said, there's truth in these things. If we can begin teaching again these 12 powers, we can raise consciousness. So he was ordained in 1958. He was a very beloved teacher of metaphysics, 12 powers, and Bible interpretation. He did that for 27 years at the, how did we say it then? The Unity School of Religious Studies. It has a new name now. And that's another thing about our movement. I want to put this out. This movement started in about 1890. Fillmore and Charles and Myrtle passed mid-century, and then the next iteration would have been Ed Rabel's generation. Now, the people who have taken up this gauntlet of 12 powers in metaphysics is Reverend Dr. Paul Hesselbeck, Reverend Dr. Scher, and Bill Holton. They are today's unity understanding. They are working to bring us into the 21st century in our understanding and use. Use is the key word here of these principles. I just spent Friday evening and all day yesterday with Bill and Scher in a master class on the 12 powers. So you can imagine my zeal bubbles over. So I'm going to try to get back to that core zeal. Mark Hicks at Truth Unity has collected and preserved all of the material that he can find from Ed Rabel. So there are lots of audio presentations there, a few video. Ed Rabel was not a writer. He was not called to write. So we have to depend on his audio to glean what he brought to the movement. So the reason that I was attracted to this talk was because I listened to his lecture on zeal in 1975. Okay, put that in your head, 1975. Now, he reminds us that zeal is a spiritual faculty, having source in spiritual nature, and its purpose is spiritual. He says it's not mere emotional exuberance or enthusiasm. True zeal is the ability to generate spiritual motivation in living. When our motive for doing, feeling, thinking, speaking, anything is in the direction of spiritual good, then our zeal faculty is working. It can be expressed as exuberance or enthusiasm, but zeal is deeper and greater than that. Zeal, as a spiritual faculty, lives within us as a divine power that, when activated, gives interest in spiritual truth. When spiritual motivation is generated in consciousness, it places us in a state of harmony with the whole universe, in tune with the infinite. I love what he says about this. The whole universe pulsates with the rhythm and harmony which are indescribably beautiful. We are learning more and more in quantum science, neuroscience about vibrations, energy, and being in rhythm. So the harmony of the universe is heard in the heart as love. The rhythm of the universe is felt in the mind as order. And these two combined are experienced by living things as an undefinable something we call evolution, progress. To accomplish this, we must be motivated by our own inner nature. It's an inside job all the way, every one of these powers. And let me just say what you've heard before too. You cannot separate one power from another. They're all working all the time. All we can do in these lessons is try to pull apart a little bit to discriminate how each plays in the system. So, Rabel says, the proper exercise of the zeal faculty is what produces a forward-moving experience of life for us. And life is meant to be an eternal progress. We all know it does not stop when we leave what we like to call skin school. Okay. So the opposite of zeal, according to Rabel, would be looking back. It would be a habit of living in past experiences. And there's a really good biblical example of this. It's in Genesis 19. It's a story of Sodom and Gomorrah. Well, you may have heard the story. Sodom and Gomorrah have been condemned by God because they have gone way too far on the sense consciousness side. They are too involved in the outside world of appearances, and they got to have a little comeuppance. So they've been condemned, but Lot and his family have found favor with God. They have done something right. Somebody within that family has aligned themselves with their powers. So Lot and his family are being led out of the city and told to flee to a nearby smaller city that would not be destroyed. Now there's a little backstory here. Lot kind of had to be convinced. Here he is being given this gift, And he, just as Jonah did, and just as we do sometimes, he kind of dug in his heels and he said, well, God, I really appreciate that, but could I not go so far? Isn't there just a closer town that I would be safe in? So God said, okay. So he'd go to this smaller city, and on the way, this is how the story goes from Genesis 19:24. The Lord rained on Sodom and Gomorrah sulfur and fire from the Lord out of heaven, and he overthrew those cities, and all the plain, and all the inhabitants of the cities, and what grew on the ground. But Lot's wife behind him looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. Now, that's all we know about Lot's wife, but it's enough. Okay. Metaphysically, Sodom and Gomorrah stand for the factors that constitute harmful and negative states of mind. Lot's wife symbolizes emotional attachment to the past. She is stuck in a negative mindset. She's out of harmony with universal consciousness. She was in a state of crystallization, a state of preserved inertia. She was clinging to negative, unhappy memories, and she just couldn't get herself to go forward. She could not activate her faculty of zeal. Lot, on the other hand, again with a little arm twisting from his angel friends, was able to ignite just the spark of zeal and begin to move forward. We've all been in that crystallized state at some time. That place of being stuck, perseverating over what's holding me back, what did I do wrong, how did I get here, if only. So this happened to me some years ago when I was challenged by a series of events. You know how it kind of comes in seasons, doesn't it? So I was left by all of this, burned out, bottomed out, and as Reverend Eileen said a couple of weeks ago, my sizzle was long past fizzled. Sue Monk Kidd described a situation in When the Heart Waits. We talked a little bit about this last week, but she was talking about living in that fast-paced world where all lines must keep moving. She says, here's one of the trickiest of paradoxes. When we keep the line moving forward at the expense of inward motion, something deep within us walks backwards. This is zeal gone amok, focused on outer appearances without spiritual connection. So to heal this state of consciousness, to move forward, Rabel says, we don't need to know the cause. We don't need to analyze the whys and hows. And how often do we do that? Again, that's being stuck in those past negative headset. So that only keeps us in the past, in a negative state, rerunning old tapes. To heal, he says, now his statement of how to do this is really simple. He says, we only need to know and use the faculty of zeal. Become still. Tune within. Acknowledge the existence of the great power of zeal. Speak the word of truth to quicken zeal. Zeal works as a solvent to dissolve the crystallized place in consciousness and then generate new spiritual motivation to move forward in life to better life. I say that simple. You know, those are so many words that describe what it is we need to do. But in a minute, I'm going to tell you some ways you can do that. For now, we are now in about 2014 maybe or so, 45 years after 1975, and we are with Linda Martella Whitsitt, a present-day teacher, moving our movement into the future. She talks, in Divine Audacity, she talks about two more aspects of zeal, audacity and devotion. She says, our power source for moving in direction of fulfillment and beyond the bounds of perceived limitations is audacity. I love that word. The quality of boldness and forwardness. As a spiritual power, audacity is our capacity for boldly proceeding in the direction of our intentions. Regarding devotion, she says, devotion is our capacity for wholehearted, single-minded attention. Devotion is present moment engagement. Zeal can only be experienced in the present moment. Well, devotion and audacity remind me of the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Let's see if I can do this. So we're going back to Babylon about 600 years before Jesus is born. The Babylonians have captured Jerusalem, and they have taken people back to Babylon. We know this as the Babylonian exile. So Nebuchadnezzar was the king at the time, and when they bring captives back in those days, what the captors did was try to enculturate the captives into their culture. I think you call that divide and conquer. Okay. So Nebuchadnezzar has in his employ, in his castle, 3 young men from Jerusalem, captives from Jerusalem, who were well-educated people, who worked well within Nebuchadnezzar's system, and he really liked them. So Nebuchadnezzar, he's a kind of an ego-centered guy, and he likes things the way he likes things, and he's going to develop the gods that he wants to worship, you know. So he builds this humongous golden statue. And the deal is that when the bells ring and the cymbals clang and the horns blow, you will bow down and worship this golden statue. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego said, not us. They said, we've got a God that we know is taking care of us. We know we can trust our God, and no way are we going to bow to your idol. Nebuchadnezzar really got mad. I mean, he lost it. He said, if you're not going to bow down to my idol, I am going to throw you into the fiery furnace. And they said, okay. They said, we don't have to make excuses with you. We know what we know, and we're good. Either our God is going to save us, and if not, I'm still not going to bow down to your idol. So Nebuchadnezzar got his minions to fire up the furnace. The fire was as hot can be, 7 times hotter. And then he had Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego tossed right in there, bound, hands bound, tossed in. That fire was so hot that the people who tossed them in got burned up. But Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego didn't. Nebuchadnezzar looks in the fire And he sees 4 people just walking around, kind of chatting in there. And he says to his minions, didn't we put 3 men in there? And they said, well, yeah, we did. And he says, but I see 4 men walking around, unbound. So then he says, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, come here. Come on here. They came out of the furnace totally unscathed. Not a hair burned. Didn't even smell like smoke. At this point, Nebuchadnezzar is converted. And he says, he praised their God as the Most High God and gave Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego promotions in the court. And he told the people of Babylon, you better not say anything against these boys' gods because he's the Most High. If you do say something, there'll be me to pay for it. So I don't do a metaphysical interpretation of this story because on its surface, it says what is important to us today. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego showed devotion. They had zeal. They showed devotion and passion for their God. Audacity in standing up to the king and not abandoning their faith. They had deep zeal that ignited and sustained their spiritual powers of faith, of dominion. They made choices with authority. They had spiritual strength to stay the course, no matter what Nebuchadnezzar said, and more. We could call out every one of the 12 powers in these actions. But the thing that I wanted us to see is the deep zeal and how that worked in these 3 men. So, how do we develop the power of zeal? In Power Up Your Life by Paul Hasselbeck and Bill and Cher Holton, they give us a formula that we can work with. They tell us how to call forth our power of zeal to the highest, most elevated level by using the HEAT formula. These 3 are really big on acronyms. So, H, honor your own uniqueness. You are a unique expression of the divine. Claim it. Own your individuality by operating from your authentic self in integrity with your highest beliefs. E, eliminate. Eliminate old beliefs, habits, and assumptions that block your good. This is one of the things that we covered this weekend is the Holtons are now claiming a 13th power. And that would be a verb, questioning unquestioned answers. And this is how we do that. Develop the skill of self-observation and become self-aware. Notice when beliefs are no longer true or serving you. Haven't we changed our beliefs over time? I certainly know that my understanding of Gomu, the God of my understanding, has changed significantly. And it continues to change as I continue to grow. So, notice the beliefs that are no longer true or serving you. Do you have some habits that fizzle your sizzle? Use your power of release. And we're going to learn all about release next month. And let those outdated beliefs and habits go. Replace them with those that serve your higher good. Adopt a bias for action. Surround yourself with people who energize you. Realize that prayer and meditation are the engines of sizzle. They are the most accelerated forms of mind action. So make the commitment, make a contract with yourself to schedule a specific time every day for prayer and meditation, and make it non-negotiable. T, temper your zeal with wisdom. Taking action without giving thought to the consequences of those actions is a dumb program. Zeal without wisdom leads to impulsive behavior. What usually happens is that you do something you wish you hadn't done. And it's best to use some discernment so we don't go off half-cocked. So there you have it. Zeal is a spiritual power, and spirit is the realm of stillness and silence. Pure zeal, according to Rabel, is a still and silent generation of power. Performed rightly, products may be enthusiasm or emotional exuberance. But it is a mistake to think enthusiasm or exuberance is zeal. Thank you, guys. Go forth and be zealous. It's time now for the blessing of our gifts and tithes. So if you will hold them in your hand, warm them up, bless them. For those who are at home looking in, you might press one of those donate buttons, for which we are so very grateful. So together, let's affirm, divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, God, that this is so.